Again, we'll break down the game here in a bit, but just an amazing game. It's everything that March Madness is meant to be.
I mean, I've never seen a guy go out and control the game, every aspect on both ends like Markquis Nowell did. He was spectacular. There was times in the game where I'm yelling at the TV, telling Michigan State, he's driving to pass, he's driving to throw a lob, don't help. And once a guy helps over, he made a perfect pass. It was a big-time performance because you look at what Markquis Nowell was able to do. It just overshadows what A.J. Hoggard was able to put together. 25 points, 6 assists, got to his left hand, back to his right hand on those little floaters. Tyson Walker made big shots. This is a big-time atmosphere. This is what you love about college basketball. And as a player, as a young guy, seeing games like this is what makes you fall in love with the game. This makes you want to go to the NCAA tournament. It makes it mean a little bit more, and I'm just glad it lived up to the hype.
It absolutely did. To have it be played in Madison Square Garden, I think was significant too, certainly for the number of players on both sides with ties to New York City's Tyson Walker, obviously, with Michigan State, and several of the players for Kansas State, including Nowell. Ultimately, look, the best player on the court was Nowell. Yeah. As you mentioned, a number of Michigan State players played really well. I mean, Joey Hauser was great. Unfortunately, missed a front end of a one-and-one that really hurt them, but had a fabulous game shooting the three. Hoggard was tremendous. Walker getting the hoop. I felt like when they finally had Akins kind of on Nowell at the end, he did as good a job as you could do, considering how good Nowell is. So there's a lot of positives to take out of it. It was interesting to hear Tom Izzo afterward, and he used the term lucky. I think he probably, if he could do it again, would say fortunate. K-State hit some fortunate shots, but that's just kind of the way that it goes, right? I mean, the truth of the matter is they shot 56% in the game. I do think that Michigan State, we've seen them struggle a little bit defensively at times this year, particularly down the stretch, and unfortunately they struggled again last night. If
there was one shot where I could maybe say it was luck, it was with Markquis Nowell. When he checked back into the game, the shot clock is running down, he shoots it off of 1 foot, and he's behind the three-point line, and it counts for three. Like
he banked it in. Oh, he banked it in, by the way. Yes.
Those count. So I'll give it to Coach Izzo. That was a little luck. Maybe Coach shouldn't have said it that way, but their defense, they just were overhelping. And it wasn't just the fact that they were overhelping at times. They just couldn't find cutters. They were lost. They had their head turned. Matty Sissoko was getting back cut. Even the lob Markquis Nowell threw in the overtime, A.J. Hoggard, he just didn't know what was going on. He wasn't connected to Keontae Johnson out of the corner. His back was turned. It was just a lazy defensive effort at that point in the game, and they got a backdoor dunk. And that's when you really need to lock in defensively. You got to know what's going on, and you got to know when Nowell has the ball and he's driving in the lane, he's looking to make a play for somebody else. And I love what Akins did towards the end of the game. Made him score over length, made him score over size, and he struggled with it. And once they made him start taking a few tough ones, then you saw the half logo threes. He missed a couple of those.
He was more than willing to take some tough ones. I think he was seeking out some of the tough ones, right? I mean, he took a few shots. You're like, what are you doing, man? But I guess he had earned the right to do that at a certain point.
They started to make him a little bit uncomfortable. It just happened to be too late, because when you drive the ball, I can remember Coach Paint saying it all the time. He doesn't need you on the help. Make him finish oversized. Sometimes you see Maddie come over, or Joey Hauser come over, and when they come to block the shot and they don't block it, or he doesn't even shoot the ball, it's an easy dump off at the rim or an easy kick out three, and that's where Michigan State was lacking all night.
Nearly 1.4 points per possession for Kansas State. They scored on 62% of their possessions. Again, it's really hard to win that way. And think about this. I mean, Michigan State's was involved in two of the most memorable games of the season this year. The other one, obviously, the crazy comeback for Iowa. So they scored more than 90 points in both of those games and lost. Just for a little perspective, they had two games in Tom Izzo's entire tenure, going back to the mid-'90s, where they had scored more than 90 points and lost the game. It happened twice this year. It happened twice in the last month. So it just gives you a sense that this was an uncharacteristically average to below average defensive team. Certainly for Tom Izzo, well below average. I think, nationally kind of an average defensive team, and that's just out of character for them.
Yeah, and I don't know if they had the athletes that they normally have on the perimeter. You think of guys like Gary Harris that could do it on both ends of the floor. That's 6'4", Brandon Dawson, rim protectors like Adrian Payne or Marcus Bingham, and guys like that protecting the basket. So this is an unconventional roster for Tom Izzo, and they figured it out down the stretch. When you have a guy like Markquis Nowell, but it's making plays like he was making last night. Sometimes you just run into a monster. Because you talk about how many points they scored in that. He scored or assisted on 63 of their 98 points. So sometimes it's just nothing you can do. But I like at the end of the game, maybe it took them too long to go to him. I think Jaden Akins was their best option. They figured it out then, just didn't have enough time.
Give our guy, Bruce Weber, credit. He was the one who lured Noel to Kansas State, one of just two holdovers from Bruce's era on that team. And again, just a remarkable performance. It is one of those where, kind of to your point, you tip your hat and you say, heck of a game. And Michigan State certainly proved that they were good enough to play deep into this tournament, just didn't win the game. We look at the season, 21-13. They made it to the Sweet 16, 15th time in Tom Izzo's tenure. That's the fourth most of any school in that time. They've been a model of consistency, another 20-win season, a team that shot it well. They didn't always defend well, but still survived the longest of any team in the conference, at least in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, Wisconsin's still alive in the NIT, but what do you make of the season that was?
I think they went through a lot of adversity. You start the season without Jaden Akins. Malik Hall goes down. You take some losses to Alabama. You get smacked at Notre Dame. And then they lose to Northwestern at home. And I think at the time, it felt like a worse loss than it ended up being. Northwestern coming second in the Big Ten. No one expected that. But they fought through adversity. And to have a chance to go to an Elite Eight, being down 3, having the ball in your hands after the season they had, you think about the tragedy on campus, all of what those guys have been through. This is what college basketball is about. And you got to see the leadership of Coach Izzo. You got to see those guys grow through tough times, stay together as a unit, keep playing for something. And I can't wait to see what they look like next season, because they got a lot of good guys coming in. The class they have coming in, and Cohen Carr, Xavier Booker, Jeremy Fears. This could be one of their better classes they've had in a while. So you put this team with the freshmen coming in, these leaders leading those freshmen, this could be special again.
Top 5 recruiting class nationally. Booker is a top 10 player in the country coming in, a big guy who seems like he is Big Ten ready. There's a lot to feel good about. I mean, I would say Tom Izzo in some ways maybe got more out of this team than you would have expected. You make a great point about the tragedy on campus and everything that they went through, everything those players went through, everything the community went through and continues to go through right now. So, again, is this Tom Izzo's best team? I mean, not by a long shot, but definitely a team that peaked at the right time. You got better here in these last couple of weeks of, March Madness, and just disappointing, obviously, that they weren't able to move on because, frankly, that bracket's opened up. I mean, I don't want you to – who knows what's going to happen? FAU may win the national championship. I would be surprised if it happened this year, but you can't look at this matchup that's coming up and say – they wouldn't have a chance against FAU, right? You win this game, and it kind of felt like, you're kind of playing for a berth in the Final Four, retrospectively, now that we know who won that second game.
No, 100%. You just keep playing, and you keep chugging along, and I love where this team ended. And this is one of those seasons where I got to realize as a fan what type of coach Tom Izzo was. I got to see what all the people talked about when they called him Mr. March. Because as a player, you don't appreciate it when you're going against them. You don't get to see the downs that they're having in their locker room or how they're playing. So when I got to see the struggles that they had in December and January, to see where they're at right now, it's just a credit to coach. It's a credit to their leaders in the locker room because it's big time. And I talk to all Michigan State fans when I say this. You look at Cohen Carr, you got to think of Brandon Dawson, you think of Gary Harris, you think of all of those athletes, all of those Michigan State dogs. You combine them into one, and the baby is Cohen Carr 100%.
Wow. It's an elite class, no doubt, and I know Michigan State fans are really excited about it. So lots to look forward to and lots to be proud of from what was a difficult year, an emotional year, but ultimately, in many ways, it's a very satisfying year. Lots more. 2 Big Ten teams are as dominant as Michigan's women's gymnastics team. Now 8 team titles in the last 9 years after they captured another one last weekend in Iowa. It was the 26th title for legendary coach Bev Plotke. Abby Heiskall captured the all-around title for the second straight year. And Abby Heiskall joins us now. She is today's big interview. Abby, you're the first Michigan gymnast to repeat as Big Ten all-around champ in nearly 20 years. Congratulations, first of all. How does the second one compare with the first?
Thank you. Honestly, I think every time I look back on it, it's like, wow, I'm an all-around champion at Big Tens. And, just talking with other gymnasts around the conference, I think a lot of times the Big Ten gets discounted as a power conference, especially in gymnastics, just because we have so many great teams across the whole country. But this year, when you look around and you look at the podium of all around contenders, it's like there's quarter tenths, half tenths between first and second and third and fourth. So I think when you look around and see how competitive the Big Ten is really getting, it makes it even more rewarding to be like, wow, I'm surrounded by so many great gymnasts and I ended up on top. So I think it was super cool to end this year again on top of the podium for the all-around.
And so that's where you are presently, but you look at the history too. Now you have 6 individual Big Ten titles, including 3 of them this year in various events. That is the second most ever at Michigan. It's been a long time since anyone had more. I mean, you are going to go down as one of the all-time greats in the history of this program that we have already outlined. Is an incredible program. What does that mean to you as you look at the historical context of what you've accomplished throughout your career?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know that statistic, so that's super cool. I think that really speaks to the tradition and legacy at Michigan Gymnastics, and again, the Big Ten, how we are becoming a power conference. And I think it's really cool to see how, you know, the thing that's remained consistent is that Michigan, we have great athletes, we have great gymnasts, but we also have great people. So I think it's cool to be able to follow in we call them our alumni sisters, be able to follow in their footsteps and be able to carry on the legacy that they started.
I want to talk about your beam performance in the Big Ten Championships. You got a perfect score. It's the first time that's been done in the Big Ten Championships, perfect score on the beam in 20 years. And when we spoke last year, you expressed to me that you always were nervous when you got up on the beam, and I guess that makes sense, right? I mean, there's kind of like the potential for what could go wrong on the beam probably overrides any of the other routines, at least from a layman's perspective, or any of the other apparatuses. But it seems like you've had some really good moments on the beam. I mean, is it time to start rethinking that philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Beam, especially once you hit college, beam, it's mental. You know, when you reach the collegiate level, when you're doing your sport, it comes down to, are you mentally sharp or are you not? And I think that's something that I've really grown in the past couple of years, especially having a great beam coach like Miley. We really focus on creating scenarios that simulate meet settings. So I think she does a really good job of preparing us for, you know, competition settings. While you can't ever actually recreate what it's going to be like to compete at a Big Ten championship, she does a really good job of trying to, you know, turn up the music super loud or have everyone in the gym silent, just to add that little extra layer of pressure in the gym. So when you go into a meet, they can throw the punches, you can have other teams chanting, singing, doing whatever, but when you're on that beam, it's just you and the beam and following your training. So I think I'm really proud of how the way me and Miley have been able to work together to, you know, gain that confidence and just go up there, be calm, and do my normal gymnastics.
We spoke last year, and at least my sense was that it might be the last time around for you. You had that COVID year, but wasn't really clear what you were going to do. What ultimately swayed you to come back to Michigan and compete for another year?
Yeah, so when I graduated my undergraduate degree in kinesiology, and I wasn't super sure what I wanted to do with that. I had looked into nursing, but COVID kind of prevented me from being able to shadow or get any experience in that realm. So ultimately it came down to me looking at what was best for my future. And that's when I started to express interest in the Master's of Management program through Ross. It's a great program, and a big part of it is career exploration. So that's what ultimately drew me to that. And so I talked with Bev. It was super last minute, but I talked with Bev, I think it was the end of May, early June. I was like, hey, if I can get into this program, if I can apply and get in, I'll come back for a 5th year. And we were all super excited. I was excited to see if we could make it happen. And I applied and ended up getting in, which was also very exciting. And it's been a great year. I don't regret the decision at all because it's just been a great year. I've been enjoying gymnastics. I've been enjoying this program that's very different from anything that I'm used to. So it's been overall a very rewarding experience.
I'm sure you really had to twist her arm for her to make a spot for you on the team, right? Got the all-around champion be in the Big Ten saying I might come back. All right, well, I guess we'll figure out something for you there, Abby. So you mentioned the academic transition. What about on the team? Like, how is your role on the team as a leader? Is it different? Do you feel like kind of being back for that extra year has in some ways affected that role?
No, I think so. We always joke around, Bev, specifically with me and Nat, that we're the grandmas of the team. And we are, you know, we've been here for almost 5 years now, and we do have experience. We have experience through a global pandemic and winning a national title, and we also have experience from what it's like to be a freshman, what it's like to come in a normal year. So I think, you know, having all of those years of experience behind me has really allowed me to open up and use what I've learned along the way to help guide the underclassmen and help them in any way possible, because every year for me has looked so completely different, and I wouldn't trade that because it's been helpful for me to help guide the younger girls on my team. So I think this year, again, has just been the icing on the cake, but it also has been rewarding to be able to use these experiences to help guide them in the right direction.
So now you head into regionals coming up here next week. You were telling me off the air you got this weekend off, and then regionals start next week. You guys won the first ever national championship in school history. A couple years ago, you were on the beam, as we talked about, that sealed the national championship win. You're ranked third in the country right now, so it's certainly not unreasonable to think that Michigan could win another one. How much do you talk about that as a goal now as you head into NCAA competition?
Yeah, we make no bones about it. That's the goal. Everyone wants to win a national title, but I think what we do a really good job of is not focusing on winning, it's focusing on doing our gymnastics. And, you know, coming off of a win at Big Tens is great momentum going into a competitive site like regionals, where every site, it's anyone's game. You never know what can happen. Gymnastics is such a crazy sport, so you never know what's going to happen. But again, just focusing on what we do in the gym every day and carrying that over into competition is what ultimately will allow us to bring home another national title, and not necessarily focusing on the scores or the outcome, but again, just relying on our training, trusting in our teammates, and knowing that we have every potential that every other team has to take home another win.
5 Michigan gymnasts all time have won individual national titles. Is there an event that you look at heading into the NCAAs that you feel best about in terms of competing for an individual national championship? You
know, we have such a strong vault team, and I know the year that we won was when we started to really take off on vault, when we debuted 6 1.5s in our lineup, which was very special for us. And I don't think we have a national vault champion, so I think it would be really cool to be able to come away with a vault title. Again, the focus is the team, but if one of us were able to come away with a vault title, I think that would be really cool for our program and for all of us just to watch that. So,
Abby, I saw you were reflecting on social media, 18 years as a gymnast, and this is probably it for you. What do you think when you think about a career in this sport coming to a close?
You know, it's sad. It's bittersweet because I have been doing this sport since I was 5. So it definitely is going to be a transition. It's going to be weird not having to go to practice at 2 every single day. So I think it is going to be a big transition, but I'm ready. Me and Natalie talk about it all the time. It's like we are going to enjoy every waking moment that we have left in this sport, but when we hit that finish line, we can look back and realize that we accomplished so much over the course of our long career that there's nothing that we should not be proud of. There's so many things, so many boxes that we've checked, and so I think it'll be definitely, again, bittersweet, but we're excited for what lies ahead.
Including free afternoons. That'll be nice, right?
Yes.
What's next now? So you've got the undergraduate degree in kinesiology. You're going to have a degree from the business school as well. What do you want to be doing a year from now?
So first and foremost, I'm taking a trip to Italy.
Nice.
It's right after I graduate. I'm going to Italy, which I'm super excited about because I've only been out of the country one time. But then after that, I hope to pursue a career in consulting, which is definitely a huge pivot thinking to a year ago when I was looking at nursing, but I'm super excited to see where that can take me and all the opportunities that will open up for me.
Well, fantastic. Abby Heiskall, been such a pleasure to visit with you a couple times now on the show. Best of luck here in the NCAA tournament and potentially bringing home another national championship. But either way, congratulations on everything you've accomplished.
Thank you so much.
You may recall that Iowa has announced it'll be the first ever Power 5 school to have a women's wrestling team. They start competing next season, already have a full roster on campus practicing, and one of their wrestlers has signed an endorsement deal. UFC announcing a while back that Bella Mir will serve as an NIL ambassador. Mir also competes in mixed martial arts. Bella Mir is joining us now. And Bella, how has this experience been here this year as you guys look to build a program which launches next season?
It's been looking great, honestly. The girls here are amazing. Some of the best teammates I've ever worked with, and the coaches are amazing. It's crazy how good this first year is, having it be the first program in Iowa history and in Power 5, so it's going amazing.
In high school, you wrestled some against boys, you wrestled some against girls. What's it like now to be wrestling exclusively against girls and to have a team at the Power 5 level, the first one that is devoted to women's wrestling?
Honestly, it's an experience that I feel like every girl should honestly have. I've been on a guys team my whole life since I've just been wrestling, and having this team full of girls and having that camaraderie and that like sisterhood, like it's one of a kind. I love it.
You have an incredibly accomplished coach in Clarissa Chun, a great wrestler herself. Describe her leadership style and this kind of unusual situation where you are spending a year building a program without actually competing, that you guys are just kind of practicing and starting with this foundation. What's she been like, and how have you gone about doing that?
She has been an amazing coach. She's honestly, like, this is obviously one of the best in the world, bronze in the Olympics, world champion. She's just as good, probably even better coaching. She's been handling this really well. Her and the other assistant coaches, Coach Gary and Coach Tanya, and they've been handling this really smoothly.
Now, you decided to go wrestle in college rather than going straight into an MMA career. For those who don't know, your dad is Frank Mir. He's a two-time heavyweight champion in MMA. What was your parents' reaction originally when you told them you wanted to pursue MMA? Like, how did that kind of come about other than being exposed to it throughout your entire life?
Yeah, they always tried to push me out of it. They tried to put me in softball, soccer, track, you name it, any kind of sport to keep me out of martial arts and the fighting world, and it didn't work so well. So they kind of just accepted it and then are on the ride with me. And yeah, I did decide to come to college because I thought it would be a good decision to get a degree and wrestle for as long as I can before continuing my MMA career. I am 3-0 right now. I'm supposed to be fighting once, I think twice in the summer. So I'm just been trying to balance both lifestyles.
Your dad has said publicly that he wants his retirement fight to be on the same card as you. Other than him kind of saying that, have you guys actually discussed how that may actually come to pass, like what that would look like?
Yeah, so around August, I'll have about my second fight this year. And that's what we've been discussing for him to train for him to be having his last fight. So we have been discussing like who's he going to fight and his opponent, and just trying to get back in the gym with him. And I'm just really excited to get back training with him back home. And yeah, I'm super excited.
You recently signed an NIL deal with UFC. Tell me what that looks like. Like, how does it manifest itself, and what are you doing as a part of that NIL deal?
Yeah, so I've signed to the UFC. Basically, I'm allowed to use their complex back in Vegas. Me and Dana have been talking about after couple organizations I fight for. I'll eventually fight for the UFC, and they just let me use their complex, the PI, the Performance Institute, and the Apex back in Vegas, because there's 2 buildings now, and so yeah.
So in the meantime, here you are, and you're going to wrestle for Iowa. And one thing that's really interesting to me is the great men's wrestling history, obviously at Iowa, not just a history, but a present as well. A team that just finished second in the NCAAs, has a number of national championships to its credit. To what degree has the women's wrestling program interacted with the men and used them for kind of advice and program building and just as a resource?
Yeah, we haven't really been mixing with the guys that much at practice, especially. Just they've had their focus with Big Tens, NCAA's, just their season, and we're kind of just focusing on our season. But we do talk to them and hang out with them sometimes. They're really good people, and they're honestly so inspiring to see like how hard they work, because sometimes we'll see them work out in the room. But yeah, no, they are amazing still. They still are a really good impact on the program.
It is Women's History Month, as you may know, and Iowa has really been on the cutting edge of women's athletics for years. Dr. Christine Grant was a Title IX pioneer long before your time, but we've seen it now. I mean, the incredible support for the women's basketball team this year. It just feels like through the years, women's sports have meant so much to Iowa. How have you seen that in your short time there, the support that the community gives for women's athletics?
Yeah, I've been to a couple colleges, and I've never seen any kind of support like this towards their women's team. They care about every sport, girl, guy, they care for everything. They want all their teams to be the best. And I saw that with like the few games I've been to, like soccer and basketball, and they put all of their interest as they would be like a men's team. And I think that's just so cool to see that a college Division I level and how far women have gone in the sport, just all sports all across. And I think it's just so cool to see how much these sports are growing for women.
Are there historical female figures in sports or otherwise who particularly inspire you?
Oh my gosh, that's hard. I guess like in the fighting world, because that's really the only sports I've watched growing up. Holly Holm probably has to be my, I guess, person I look up to, besides my dad. But she just inspires me with how she just carries herself, and win or loss, and she's just so humble, and she's honestly she's a really good person to look up to.
In what ways do you see yourself as a role model for young girls?
Oh gosh, I don't think about that much. I feel like I'm very positive. I'm always smiling, so I'm just always trying to like have a good time and just work hard. And I hope that girls see that too when they look up to me.
Well, Bellamere, congratulations on all that you've accomplished to this point. Really looking forward to seeing you compete here next year for the Hawkeyes, and as you mentioned, this summer in the ring as well. Bellamere, congratulations. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me.
As you probably heard, basketball coach Micah Shrewsberry leaving Penn State after just 2 seasons to take over at Notre Dame. Shrewsberry led the Nittany Lions to the Big Ten championship game this year, into the NCAA tourney for the first time in a dozen years, won their opener before falling to Texas in round 2. Raphael, you played for Micah Shrewsberry at Purdue. You've remained close to him. Thoughts on this move?
I'm just super happy for Coach. I mean, you go and have success, and this is a part of college basketball. Probably didn't want to leave Penn State, but he goes to Notre Dame. I hope he has great success there. He's back in Indiana, has Indiana ties, started coaching at Wabash, spent some time at DePaul. But I've known Coach Shrewsberry since I was 15, 16 years old. A great man, a great coach, a brilliant offensive mind. I think his time in the NBA, he developed his defensive mind. And I think with those 2 things, going to Notre Dame, back home, recruiting Indiana, I know how he is as a recruiter. He's going to get the right type of guys in there, and I think they're going to win some games.
And it sounds like the lure of going home was a huge part of it. Penn State stepped up, attempted to double his salary. Yep. There's certainly been some discussion about maybe some challenges with NIL, which I think everyone's kind of still trying to figure out. But Penn State made a commitment here no question about it. Shrewsberry, just as you said, he's an Indiana guy. He's got deep ties there. And Notre Dame is a program that, frankly, they haven't been in the Final Four since the late 1970s, but Mike Brey got them close. I mean, there's definitely potential there. It's a solid program, but one where you clearly can leave your own legacy. So a lot of stuff that makes sense. And I think we all feel like Penn State will be fine. They just need to figure out kind of what the next move is here. And it's a tough spot for them to be in right now because so much of their roster is turning over. They had a really good class coming in, but there's already a sense that group is starting to splinter a little bit. Yep. You have Seth Lundy declaring for the NBA. So kind of what do you make of where Penn State is right now?
I think it starts with those guys in the locker room figuring out what they want to do. And the three guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing what they decide will be Kebajai. Clary came on at the end, and then Evan Mahaffey, he had a really good season. If you could get those three guys to return, you add in Dalian Johnson and his shooting ability, those guys buying into a new coach, that'll be big time. Because in this era of basketball we live in today, you can have a completely new roster next season. All of these guys could transfer out, and then you got to bring in a coach that could get young guys to come in and not just get them to come to campus, but get them to buy in and how they really want to play.
And I know that first time in a dozen years making the tournament makes it seem like, well, this is a down-and-out program and it's impossible to win. Pat Chambers would have had them in the tourney in the COVID year as well. So you're talking 2 of the last 4 years with 2 different coaches. Mm-hmm. They've had a team good enough to make the NCAA tourney. This is clearly a place where you can win. You mentioned what the next coach brings and who that coach might be, and there's been a lot of discussion about Adam Fisher, obviously, who was on the staff, who went to Penn State, who's been on the staff under 2 different coaches there. He's with Jim Larinaga as well and helped recruit a lot of that team, which, of course, has had tremendous success this year. Matt Langel of Colgate being mentioned, Mike Rhodes of VCU. There are a lot of other names floating around. Without getting into the specific candidates, what kind of coach makes sense in your mind for Penn State?
I always like coaches that have played for their university. You mentioned Fisher. He's played there. He knows what it means to be a Nittany Lion. He respects winning there. He wants to build the program back up, and he has pride for it. When you have a guy that's been there that has pride to make it a better place, it's going to show in the recruiting. It's going to show in his coaching style. But I think they got to go with a coach that, like I said, can get buy-in from young people. And at this point in the game, getting buy-in from young people during the NIL, during the transfer portal and all of that, that is big time. That goes before X's and O's in my point, because you could be the greatest X's and O's guys, but if you get young guys to come in and they're not buying into that system or they don't believe in what you're saying, it's not going to work out. So I think you start there, and then for Penn State, I think recruits are looking at Penn State and how they were this year, irregardless of who the coach was. So you're going to go in and have guys that want to score the ball, so you can sell that as well. They played in the tournament, so they have a brand that they've built, and just going off of that. But I think if they get the right guy in there, they could definitely win some games. Penn State they're in a good position.
Adam Fisher is the guy who the players have endorsed. Now, whether or not you go with that, that often happens, right, when a head coach leaves, that the players will endorse the assistant. But there's a lot to like about his resume, no doubt about it. But you go out and they'll go through a methodical process and they'll find the best coach for them. And we'll see whether they can build on some of that foundation that's been laid there.